Tom, are you ready to go?
No, we have to hear a farm story first.
Okay. So my son Alex is working for my brother in the landscape business, and he got home at like 10 o'clock last night. They had a late job that they were working on. They do hardscapes. So we're sitting in the den watching television, and my front door opens. Nobody ever comes in the front door. Alex comes in the front door, and he says, I just love living in the country. I said, why is that? Our cat bowl is at the back porch steps. He said, because when I pulled up, there was not one, not two, but a whole family of skunks eating the cat food.
Oh my goodness.
And he's trying to get to the back door, but he can't because those skunks are there. You don't want to scare a skunk away. So that's my farm story for today. We have a family of skunks now that hang out at our back door.
Oh my goodness, Wendy. You need to just have some cameras on your outside and just filming all of this.
We do have outdoor cameras, but they're out in the woods getting all the deer. We have to, see what bucks are out there for hunting season. But that's it.
Well, good morning, guys. And I was thinking as I was looking at and planning this devotional, that the pleasure, that I have for being able to participate in this, and I try to, each week to try to do something kind of meaningful according to the times. And as we know, this coming Sunday is Father's Day. We kind of celebrated and highlighted Mother's Day, which was May 10th. And, May 10th is when the colleges and all the other universities have their graduations. That's the day that more flowers are sold during that weekend than any other weekend in the year, and more restaurants before the virus would have been jam-packed, that you would have probably had to do something Saturday if you didn't have reservations on Sunday. So it has been a great day that this country recognizes. And I wanted to talk to us this morning about, about Father's Day. It's not one where it's highlighted as much or recognized as much. But I just want you to know, as I was doing this, the scripture tells us that God made man in his own image, and God made man, Adam, out of the dust of the earth, and how important the man is, the father is in life. And I said, when we start thinking about what's going on in our country now, and sometimes we just think that a political party is an answer. We may think Washington is the answer, or we may think Raleigh is the answer, or Columbia is the answer, and we look for these people or these politicians who say these things, and we believe that that's where things should go. But I want to submit to you this morning that it's not any of these places. It's the home. I was reading, Chris was talking about the devotional, and I said I read Psalms 112 2 days ago, and that kind of led me to where I wanted to go this morning. Psalms 112, praise ye the Lord. Blessed is the man that feareth the Lord, that delighteth greatly in his commandments. His seed shall be mighty upon earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed. Wealth and riches shall be in his house, and his righteousness endureth forever. Unto the upright there arises light in the darkness. He is gracious and full of compassion and righteousness. A good man showeth favor and lendeth. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Surely he shall not be moved forever. The righteousness shall be everlasting remembrance. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. His heart is established. He shall not be afraid until he see his desires upon his enemies. That's Psalms 112. And Paul talks about the man, the family in Ephesians, where he says, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word. This is the husband. We're not talking about equal rights and all of the other things that's in society, but what the husband's supposed to do and what he's supposed to do for his wife. He said that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. So no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourished and cherished it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Paul is talking about the church, but he's also talking about the home. Father's Day is a time in which we recognize fathers and father figures and their contribution to their children, as well as society overall. There are tremendous advantages that are afforded to children who have active, involved fathers during childhood and adolescence. There are some great points, but because my time is limited, I'm not going to talk about the advantages of having a father. I just want to share with you some of the disadvantages of having a father. This is a not having a father in the home. According to the 2007 UNICEF report on the well-being of children in economically advanced nations, children in the US, Canada, and the UK rank extremely low in regard to social and emotional well-being in particular. Many theories have been explored to explain the poor state of our nation's children. However, a factor that has been largely ignored, particularly among children and family, is that where they go from there. I'm just going to read some of the points because I know we got a speaker this morning. This is about not having a father in the home. Although the absence of their father is not an isolated risk factor, it definitely can take a toll on the development of children. This is important to take care and note of, as many would argue that one parental role is more significant than the other. That is simply not true. According to Psychology Today, researchers have found these narratives to be true. The results of father absence on children are nothing short of disastrous along a number of dimensions. Number one, children diminish self-concept and compromise physically and emotional security. Children consistently report feeling abandoned when their fathers are not involved in their lives, struggling with emotions and episodic bout of self-loathing. Two, behavioral problems. Fatherless children have more difficulties with social adjustment, are more likely to report problems with friendship and manifest behavioral problems. Many develop a swaggering, intimidating persona in an attempt to disguise their underlying fears, resentment, anxiety, and happiness. Three, truancy and poor academic performance. 71% of high school dropouts are fatherless. Fatherless children have more trouble academically, scoring poorly on tests of reading, math, thinking skills. Children from father-absent homes are more likely to play truant from school, more likely to be excluded from school, more likely to leave school at age 16, less likely to attain academic and professional qualifications. Four, delinquency and youth crime, including violent crimes. 85% of youth in prison have an absent father. Fatherless children are more likely to offend and go to jail as adults. Number five, Promiscuity and teen pregnancies. Fatherless children are more likely to experience problems with sexual health, including a greater likelihood of having intercourse before the age of 16, foregoing contraceptions during first intercourse, becoming teenage parents, contracting sexually transmitted disease. Girl manifest an object of hunger for males and experience emotional loss of not having a father. 6, drug and alcohol abuse. Fatherless children are more likely to smoke, drink alcohol, and abuse drugs in childhood and adulthood. 7, homelessness. 90% of runaway children have an absent father. 8, exploitation and abuse. Fatherless children are at greater risk of suffering physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, being 5 times more likely to have experienced physical. 9, abuse and emotional maltreatment, with 100 times higher risk of fatal abuse. A recent study reported that preschoolers not living with both of their biological parents are 40 times more likely to be sexually abused. 10, physical health problems. Fatherless children report significantly more psychosomatic health symptoms and illness such as acute and chronic pains, asthma, headaches, and stomach aches. 11, mental health disorder. Father absent children are consistently overrepresented over a wide range of mental health problems, particularly anxiety, depression, and suicide. 12, life chances. As adults, fatherless children are more likely to experience unemployment, low income, remain on social assistance, and experience homelessness. 13, future relationships. Father absent children tend to end the partnership earlier, more likely to divorce or dissolve their cohabitating unions, and are more likely to have children outside of marriage or outside any partnership. 14, mortality. Fatherless children are more likely to die as children and live an average of 4 years less than over anyone else's lifespan. I mean, when you hear these stats, and they're not some that have been politically driven or anything else that I've got, it's just this one that were on the internet. These stats should make all of us cry. Fathers, and for those who are hearing this morning, if you're a father and you're in a home, God bless you for that. But we all know within our society and people that we know where there are children that are not in a home where a father is present. And so this morning, I'm asking all of us, you know, if we're good fathers, try to find young men that we can mentor. If we are good mothers, you know, try to encourage and see that families that we know where the father, and notice I never said a man. I'm saying a father. There's a difference between a man and a father. And so I'm encouraging us to be able to look at this, because many of the things that are going on in our country that's not a tribute to the virus is because of not having a man in the home. I said, I looked yesterday and I said, this almost brought tears to my eyes that 70% of Black families do not have a father in the home. And I said, so when you see that proportion and you hear those stats as to where we are, I mean, it's easy for us just to recognize, you know, where we are, that we are not following God's plan, where God said a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. We have too many homes, you know, that there isn't that avenue, is not that entity of marriage that's going on in that home. We on this call cannot solve this, but we can pray to a God who has the power to be able to bring solution to these things that are occurring, and also give us tolerance to understand that where we see someone and how they act is not because we see them that day and they're acting that way just for that day. It's because of that inbreeding and the things that they have grown up with, the kids who don't have a father in the home. So this may not be a happy Father's Day devotional, but it's one that is based on truth. And it is based on, if we are good fathers, we share that, we mentor that, we take time in our lives to be able to mentor and comfort and help men to be greater fathers. And for those who don't have a father in their home, help us to be greater mentors and big brothers or big sisters to try to help and encourage these children also. Because we are one race of people. We're humanity, we're humans. And God has put it on our hearts, to be able to, if we know better, to do better and share our news with others. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you because we call you our Father. And Father, for those of us who know you, we know the blessing that we have of having a Heavenly Father, of someone that we can talk to, and someone who has given us a written word of how we should live and how we should act and how we should treat others. And so, Father, I pray for the fathers on this call today, that, Father, that they will be good fathers. And I pray for them and their families that they have and the influence that they have on their children. And if there's time in their life that they can share their attributes with those children who don't have fathers, to try to mentor them and be that person in their life. Because if we can be good fathers to them, then they will recognize the perfect Father more in heaven. So Father, we just praise you and we thank you for all you do for us. And we lift you up this morning in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Tom. It's people are always thanking me for facilitating this group, but I couldn't do this without you. The dedication that you have to come up with awesome devotions every week is just incredible, and we are all so grateful to you for allowing God to use you and share a word with us like you do. You're kind of like the father of our group. So, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. It's ironic too that we don't say Heavenly Mother when we pray to God. It's Heavenly Father.
Amen.
And what a parallel it is, and how important it is to have a father in our lives. Physically here on earth, it's important to have a father, but and it just shows that great parallel in having God the Father in our lives too, with the importance of that relationship. So awesome. That was a great word. Thank you so much. So folks, if you got the email, you saw that our intention is to start meeting back at the restaurant. We will continue Zoom as well on July 10th. It is a tentative. It's not hard, it's tentative. We are waiting to see what the governor is going to do on the 26th of June in North Carolina, because he's going to put out some kind of new order. So he may require us to stay farther apart, or I don't know what's gonna happen with that. So I'll keep you posted on that. But July 10th is the first day that we intended on getting back into the restaurant to meet. I did talk to John. He's doing great. He's working like crazy, which is a blessing. Tom said he and Dot ate there yesterday, and that there were other people in the restaurant as well. So I was happy to hear that he's doing well there. And then we won't be meeting on July 3rd, which is the day before 4th of July. We will be, I know everybody says we could do it on Zoom, but I'm going to be at the beach, okay? And I'm not going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm at the beach, other than to walk on the beach. So sorry about that. But, as I've been saying, one of the main blessings of this COVID virus is that I have been able to reach out to people that I know, like, and trust, good friends of mine from other groups that are just incredible in their knowledge, and also incredible in their desire to teach other people and help us all become better at what we're doing and learn things we have no idea about. And which brings me to my friend Chris Miles. Chris is in Freedom Founders. You guys hear me talk about Freedom Founders all the time. Chris is one of the trusted advisors with us in Freedom Founders. He's a dear friend. He's smart as whip. You know, I always call myself a recovering mortgage broker. Chris calls himself the anti-financial advisor. Is that right, Chris?
That's right. Yep.
Chris, I appreciate you getting up at 5:30, actually 5 o'clock, because 5:30 is when the meeting started, right?
Mm-hmm.
5:30, y'all. Big time dedication. So appreciative of you sacrificing your sleep for us, especially with small kids in the house. We know how that goes. But Chris, I'm just going to kind of give the floor to you and let you just talk about it. I mean, just talk about everything you do, to include the blog and all that good information. But tell them about your financial life. What's going on?
Absolutely. Well, first, appreciate it, Wendy. I really appreciate you having me on here, and you know, bright and early be with all the rest of you Sonrisers, right?
That's right.
And Tom, I appreciate your words too. I'm actually a father of 6, plus 2 bonus kids. So from a blended marriage. So we got 8 kids between the 2 of us, and it's like the Brady Bunch, but there's no room for Alice, so we had to kick her out, right? But yeah, I really appreciate you guys. Like, I really do. Really appreciate being here today. Yeah, just kind of, you know, briefly give an update, or not an update. I guess for you guys, it's the first date, you know.
That's right.
That sounds kind of weird to say it that way, but in any case, it's 5:30 or almost 6 right now. So if you can tell. So anyways, yeah, the big thing about what I do, like you said, I'm an anti-financial advisor, right? So my whole thing is to tell people to do essentially the opposite, you know, because, you know, 18 years ago, I started out as the traditional financial advisor. I actually went into that because my intent was to get business experience to get my MBA. So I said, I'm going to try being an entrepreneur, see how that goes. And the first kind of opportunity to become an entrepreneur was going in to be a financial advisor. And when I started to do that, I realized, hey, there's way more money being an entrepreneur than there is being a guy with an MBA. So I ended up dropping out of school and ended up become that financial advisor. Did that for 4 years, the traditional mainstream thing. But I'll tell you, after 4 years, you know, I'm one of those people, I like truth, right? I like to know that I teach with integrity, that whatever I do is true. And after being in that industry for a while, by the way, 4 years as a financial advisor is like, you know, being in a job for 40 years, you know, because most people never last beyond 2. It's I think something like a 95% dropout rate by the 2nd or 3rd year.
Wow.
So I was there for 4 years. And maybe part of the reason is that people drop out is because if they start to really dig in deeper into the things that are taught, you know, the things about save everything, spend nothing, right? Save in the stock market, and the stock market returns X%. They always say 10 or 12% a year, and they'll say all this kind of stuff, right? But in truth, it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll talk about averages, right? Like average of 10 or 12%. But the truth is that, you know, if you lose 50% of your money, you don't need 50% to get it back. You need 100% return to get it back. So if that happens all in 2 years, you lose 50%, you gain 100%, right? That means, you know, when you do the law of, you know, do a little average thing, you know, that means you have a 50 divided by 2 years, you average 25% a year, but you just broke even. You know, you lose half your money, you have to double it to get back to breaking even.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a 25% return. And I remember I learned that my 3rd year as a financial advisor, and we all said, wait a minute, what? Yeah, all the financial advisors, we got that question wrong. He says, if you lose 50%, what do you need to get back to breaking even? And we said 50%. And he said, no, because if you lose half your money, say you had 100,000, you lose half, you're down to 50. Now, if you get 50% return the next year, you only get up to $75,000. You're only halfway there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not including the fees that come out too. So even if you do happen to average 25%, and you're supposed to break even, then you lose a few thousand more, and you're down around $98,000 for having a 25% return, but you lost $2,000. And little things like that came up. What's really inflation? And when I started to run real numbers, realizing that the stock market only averaged 7.5% for the last 30 years, and that's been pretty consistent. Actually, sometimes that's a high average, depending on the years you're looking at. And so when you look at that, say, wow, in reality, after fees, I'm lucky to get 6.5%. That's if I get the full market return. You start to realize that's not great. And that's 6.5% with bipolar returns, right? Where it's going up and down and all over the place. High risk, lackluster returns, for something that's such high risk. There's no certainty behind it. There's no guarantee, and it's not cash flow. I even had to tell people, you can only live on maybe 3% a year of the total money you have. So if you happen to save up $1 million, you live on 3%, that's $30,000 a year. Congratulations, you are a broke millionaire. You have $1 million and you're living on $30,000 a year. You're living below the poverty level as a millionaire. So all these things start to add up, right? I started to see this, and there's people that even question it. People I meet with as potential clients, they bring up good questions. I realize, wait a minute, I'm just a salesman in a suit. And at that point, that's where in 2006, I said, all right, I can't do this anymore, especially after meeting real estate investors. When I started to realize that people that actually were financially free, they were retired, were not from the industry. They were, in fact, none of my clients were financially free, even though they were retired doctors, for example. But in fact, here's the kicker. Look at financial advisors. How many of them are financially free? Not off the commissions they're earning, right? But actually doing those mutual fund investments they've been telling you to put money into.
Right.
And I'll tell you from my experience, I have not met one of them. The only ones I've met that are close, that have been close, were ones that actually usually were making millions and millions of dollars as a financial advisor, again, from all the commissions and fees. They just stored it up like squirrels, and then they were living off that. It wasn't because their investments did well. It's because their business did well, right? And that's a big distinction. You want to actually follow, at least this is what I propose, right? I think you should follow somebody who actually went and did it, that goes and does those things. In fact, not in a good way. I actually did it twice. I was actually able to retire twice or get out of the rat race twice. First time was actually after I quit being a financial advisor in 2006 by doing the opposite of the advice that I was giving as a financial advisor. I started investing for cash flow instead. And it was amazing how cash flow actually works. You can actually create passive streams of income, right? That was kind of shocking that could work. Then I went through the recession. And again, I was 28 when I first was able to retire, right? Then I went through the recession because I thought I had the Midas touch, and then everything I touched turned to gold. So I took higher risk than I should have. I also cut off income streams to go and start a new business to come out of retirement, all right at the recession. So it was like this perfect storm of problems. And I basically was back in the rat race, and I had to dig back out of it. In fact, at that point, things got so bad, especially with some of the real estate I did, because I was being more speculative. I went over $1 million in debt, with all the real estate and things like that went under, as well as just business debts and everything else we took on to try to build this huge business. And then that business was failing because that business was focused towards real estate investors who couldn't also pay money. So this whole perfect storm that I had to dig back out of that hole, and was able to do it again end of 2016. So the one thing I'll tell you that really I think you guys would resonate most with than most groups, right, is that principles govern, right? Not just strategies. Strategies are one thing, but principles govern first. Principles are eternal. Principles never change, right? And I think that's a clear distinction that I had to make, is that the principles I followed to help through that kind of process, not just get out of the rat race, but then to dig myself out of holes or whatever it might be. Financial prosperity happens when you are following God's laws. God works by laws. He works by natural laws. He's the one that created them, but he also knows and understands them fully and tries to teach them to us. And that's what you get out of the Holy Scriptures. And I'll tell you that following those principles was the thing that helped me retire both times, is following those principles. Things like dollars follow value. you want to truly become prosperous, like financially prosperous, you need to figure out how to create the most value using your God-given talents and abilities, right? That is the true economic engine that gives you the money you need, even beyond passive income. Because some people will say, well, I'd like to have more money to be able to leverage and utilize. Well, great. You got to create it. You are a creator, just like your father, like our heavenly parents, right? That's the thing we were here to do, is to create and bless lives. We're born with nothing, we leave with nothing. Everything in between is stewardship, right? What are we going to do with that stewardship to bless more lives? And that's where creating value for people is like the one thing I used to obsess on. And I still do. Like, that's the thing that now is just second nature. But that was the thing that helped me first and foremost retire quickly, because I stopped asking, how do I make more money? Instead, I started asking, how can I create more value for more people? What can I do to create a win-win?
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
What you're saying is gold.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope and pray that everyone listening are truly hearing your words, because and I know you can speak to this too. It doesn't always make business sense when you're following God's principles. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it sometimes can seem different from the rest of the world, right? But that's what we're called to be. Is we're not to be in the world, or not to be of the world, but we're still going to be in it, right? But that's the thing, is like, even people that don't necessarily believe, they aren't believers, still will often accidentally follow those same principles, because they'll realize there's a truth that works. Truth is truth, like whether you find on earth, heaven, or hell, it's truth. Like truth is God's truth. That's what God works by, and that's where we have to work as well. And that's one true principle, is figuring out that people are what really has value, not things, and that it's by exchanging and blessing and serving and solving problems for people that money really comes. I know that's probably not the focus you wanted to go, but that's just one key principle at least I wanted to share there, to say this is not just an ethereal thing. This is real practical stuff that works in your life. And then when people say, like, well, how'd you do it, Chris? Like, well, first, beyond the financial strategies of investing, which to me, that's actually easy. But when you're looking at a principle of investing too, and Wendy, I know this is true as well, is that you're always looking for that win-win too. In business, with the fund that you guys have and manage and everything else, you are looking for that way to create a win-win and create an exchange, because exchange does create wealth with people, right? And when you look for that win, that's where people prosper. And I think that's the best place. Imagine what this world would be like if people stopped asking, what's in it for me? What can I do to make more money? Which is just an effect. It's not the cause. The cause is creating value in people's lives and solving problems. The effect is money. It's just a natural byproduct. But people don't think that way. They think, how do I get more money? How do I take from people? They believe in this zero-sum game of, I can only prosper if I either get lucky by winning the lottery or something, or some rich uncle dies, or two, I have to exploit somebody, which is not the case. That's how people don't prosper.
Chris, you and I know a lot of the same people. We run around in the same circles, and you and I both know people that are really successful at what they do. And you can tell the difference between in the personality and the lifestyle of the people that are successful and are believers and walk on those principles, and the people that are successful right now and just doing everything they can to run on that treadmill, that rat race, and just afraid that they're going to lose it tomorrow. You can really tell the difference of what their lifestyle is like and the stress that they live with, and the difference of the people that just walk on God's path.
Absolutely. Faith and doubt cannot coexist in the same person at the same time, right? Like, that's the thing. It's like light drives out darkness. And you're right. Like, when it's like, if you've seen that movie Signs, right, with Mel Gibson, I mean, it's a great example where there's talking about how there's two sets of people. There's people that see it as a miracle, and there's people that see it in fear. That's just chance, right? And I don't believe in any accidents. I think that everything happens for a reason. Every person we encounter happens for a very specific reason, even if we don't know what that reason is, right? And that's true. That's very true. So that's the thing. Prosperity is a very formulaic thing, like when it comes to people's lives. And And prosperity goes beyond money. I mean, that goes with, having more abundance of love and happiness and joy and all those things. I mean, that's all part of those same principles. And that's how you know it's a true principle. If it works in every aspect of your life, not just with money, not just with family or relationships, but or with health or anything, it's all encompasses one big whole. And so anyways, I mean, I think that's the big key beginning foundation that got me it got me to really question a lot. Like I really realized that, a lot of the things I was teaching was just stuff that banks and financial institutions wanted me to teach. They just said, here, teach them about dollar cost averaging. So when the market goes down, people still buy and not hate us so much, right? Like we heard people say in the last few months, like, oh, the market's going down, I should buy more. No, you should buy more after a recession, not right when it starts. If you're going to do that, if a financial advisor was smart, they'd say, you know what, don't buy from me. The market's going up. Wait till it crashes, then buy everything then, and then just dump your money in there and then don't put any more money in. But notice that there's never a bad time to buy in the stock market, right? The market's going up. Hey, keep buying. It's going up. If it's going down, dollar cost average, you're buying on sale. It's cheap. There's never a bad time. It's a perfect sales pitch. Like you think about everything that you're taught, it's just a big sales pitch. I mean, even paying off debt, the way that you hear people say it, most of the time it's actually for the bank's benefit, not your own, right? When they're saying like, hey, pay off your debt faster, pay off this mortgage faster. That wasn't something that's a true principle. That's a strategy. And sometimes that strategy can be very good. That's not a principle. The principle is live within your means, right? Principle is, be a wise steward, create more than you can consume. That's a true principle. That's something that goes beyond. But when they say pay off your debt faster, make biweekly payments, or do a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage, which actually increases your risk and puts you in a place of worse financial health. Even to the bank, they'll say, oh, your payment's higher, your debt to income ratio is too high, I don't want to give you more money. You're like, but I'm a good saver. Like I pay off my debt like good boys or good little girls. Nope, sorry, you're too risky because your payment's too high, right? But they're the ones that want you to pay that payment so that they get paid off faster. And as an investor, if you put it from an investor perspective, you'd say, yeah, I want you to pay me my money back as soon as possible too. Like all these things that we're taught as supposed to be common sense, right? Or mainstream advice is actually not geared for your financial well-being. It's actually geared for their profits, their financial well-being, not our own.
Right.
And when I questioned all of that and I started to flip it upside down and turn it inside out, I realized, wait a minute, the true key to actually becoming financially free is in many cases, not all, but in many cases, doing the opposite. It's just like if you ever watch episodes of Seinfeld, right? And George Costanza, who's typically considered the loser,
I love him.
There's only, I know he's a hoot, right? But there's only like one episode where he's a winner, and that's when the episode called
Everything Opposite.
George. He's like, I'm going to order tuna salad, not the typical chicken sandwich or whatever it was, right? And he gets the dream date of his life. He ends up getting that dream job, which is the Yankees and everything else that he wanted in life because he did the opposite, right?
That's right.
and that's true here too. So anyways, that's what it means to be an anti-financial advisor, right? Is I'm telling people to do the opposite. It's like, no, don't invest for accumulation, like stacking up money just to let it sit there with an institution where they make money off your money, like every bank would do, where every institution does. No, instead, we're going to take low risks. We're going to try to create cash flow, not accumulation, but cash flow that actually generates real income, and when I opened my eyes to that, and that was 2006, when I started to shift that mentality and see it from an investor's perspective, that's when my whole world became brighter. Like everything was like, sunshine day, it's like, like everything was so cool. I was like, yeah, like all those people I met with as financial advisors, like, wait, now something's possible. Like now something can happen, like what if this, what if that? Like now it was a whole new world of possibility that was never possible as a financial advisor. And so that's what I do. Like I actually now I do two different things, right? I actually connect people. I do more of a strategy. I'm a strategist and a connector, where people come to me and say, Chris, how can I retire in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, how can I do that? What are the strategies I do? What are the investments and that kind of thing? And I offer no investments myself. I'm more of someone to connect people to those investments, say, hey, based on your situation, what you're telling me and what you're trying to do in your financial situation, let's look at these particular options. Let's look at this. I never tell people invest in this or invest in that. I just say, hey, if you invest in this, here's the outcome. If you invest in this, here's the outcome. If you invest, so much here, so much there, because people will say, well, how much should I do and in which place? Great, we can discuss that. I just won't tell you invest here because that's against the law, So, instead I stay safe on this side of the line, say, all right, here's the things, here's how it'll work. But definitely we could strategize and make that game plan work so you could actually hit that number way more guaranteed than you would trying to accumulate that money. And that's why I try to tell people too, if you want a $60,000 a year lifestyle based on market returns, average market returns, and that's including inflation and everything else, you usually have to save about $100,000 a year for the next 20 years to have a $60,000 a year lifestyle doing mutual funds.
Wow.
Because like a Dalmatian chasing a fire truck, you're chasing inflation, right? You're trying to beat it. But when the market doesn't actually return 10 or 12% like they promise you it does, right? But instead it's only about 6.5 after you pay your fees coming out. And even if you get the S&P 500 returns, you're probably going to get only about 6.5%. What ends up happening is now if inflation's 4 or 5%, which is more closer to true inflation, not 2 or 3, because the government tells you 2 or 3 because they have to raise Social Security standard of living. So to save money on Social Security, they show you the lower numbers. Like during the Clinton era, it was interesting because when he was in office, they said, you know what? Instead of comparing the price of steak today to the price of steak tomorrow, during a recession, people don't buy steak. They buy hamburger. So let's compare the price of steak today to hamburger tomorrow. They started taking weird little variables to try to throw it in there to make the inflation numbers look more conservative. So then they didn't have to raise the cost of living standard on Social Security so they can let that money last longer, right? Little weird things like that. Or even how they do the mathematics, they even changed that during the Bush era, so there's all kinds of weird things that happen. So, you can't trust, it's Ben Stein. If you guys know who he is, he was the actor that was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and said, Bueller, that guy.
We'll leave the light on
commercials,
for you.
right? And all that stuff. His dad was actually a Harvard economist, and he majored in economics at Harvard too. He graduated in economics, believe it or not, which is why he's teaching about voodoo economics in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? Interesting thing about him is that he talked about his dad as an economist would say, figures don't lie, but liars figure, right? That was back in the 1950s when he questioned his dad about us running out of food by the 1960s. Because, hey, the figures don't lie, Dad. And he said, yeah, figures don't lie, but liars figure. There's an agenda here. And we're still alive today, 60 plus years later. So
although
anyways,
I don't know, Wendy's ran out of beef over the past couple of weeks. I thought that was strange. Now you can truly ask, where's the beef?
Where's the beef, right? That's right.
So, Chris, talk a little bit about the insurance that you were sharing with us.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. So I used to be anti whole life insurance, back in those traditional days. And then I met real estate investors that were using it and they were loving it. I said, well, how could you? Those things don't pay anything, right? And really the way they were doing it, it wasn't paying that much, but they were leveraging it as a way to have reserves to build over time, right? And eventually become their own bank. If you guys have ever heard the infinite banking concept, that was a concept I learned from real estate investors first. But I realized that those guys were doing it a crappy way based on what insurance salesmen were selling them too. There's still some traditional stuff mixed in with it, right? So over the years, and I've been in life insurance license for the last 18 years, the whole time. I almost got rid of it in 2006. And then one of those investor guys said, hey, you know what? You should probably keep it just in case you decide to use it again. And so over the years, I started to realize you could actually use money in a way that becomes a tax-free savings account, which you don't really get much in the US here. But it can act like a Roth IRA without the age 59 and a half rule. And 2, you can use it like a HELOC, but it's like a HELOC that pays you interest. And so essentially what you can do with the life insurance policies, you can make money in 2 places at the same time. You could be making money, of course, inside the life insurance, while at the same time using that same money to make money in your investments, creating cash flow for you. And so, so even if you say, hey, I'm making X% return on this investment, well, guess what? You can actually use that money at the same time, be making an extra 4% plus tax-free on top of the money you're already making with that investment. Now, people will say, well, how can it be in two places at once? Well, that's the cool thing, is that, you know, if you structure it and design it correctly, right? And that's the thing that most insurance guys won't do, because the way to design it correctly requires you to cut your commissions by about 75 to 80%, you know? And this kind of comes back to that principle of dollars follow value, right? And creating value for people, because the ironic thing is, you know, when I've been teaching this principle, this kind of strategy for, oh, good grief. Well, since 2006, right? But I started to refine it, started to realize you could do it better even after like 2008, 2009, the recession. I actually learned that you can make them cash rich and low cost, because that's the main thing that people have his whole life, is that those first 2 years, you put money in, everything goes to insurance costs in those first 2 years. So when you go to year 3, you're like, wow, I have nothing, you know? So even if you put in $25,000 a year, you're like, I just put in $50,000 and I have no cash to show for it. I have this death benefit, but that was, if I were to, you know, quit this policy now, I just bought really, really expensive term insurance, right? That's not worth it. And then by year 3, then it starts to build faster, but it takes several years to build it. Well, I found a way that in the first year, you could actually have at least 75 or 80% of that cash in the first year. So if you put in $50,000 over those $25,000 a year for 2 years, you would actually have over $40,000, not zero, but over $40,000 already in cash.
Wow.
And then from that point on, from about year 3 on, everything is going and building in that cash tax-free savings account. So it's almost like this tax-free supercharged savings account when you do it that way, because it ends up, your net return ends up being 4 or 5% a year tax-free, which actually competes with the stock market at 6.5% taxable, right? But unlike a Roth IRA, you're limited to $6,000 or $7,000 a year. I can put in almost whatever I want into my life insurance policy. So it's like having a Roth IRA, but I can dump in way more than $5,000 or $6,000 a year, or $6,000 or $7,000 a year, and I can actually pull it out sooner. I can pull it out the first month. So I've had people that set up a policy within the last month say, "All right, now I want to pull the money out of it and invest it." And it's like, cool. All right, well, here's how much is available. Let's go for it. And,
so
when
you're putting money in this insurance policy, you're not only earning interest on that insurance policy while it's in there, you are also able to borrow that money from yourself and use it in another investment, making money off of that too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like what you would try to do with a savings account, right? And that's what it really does, is that when people try to save up money, like maybe you take the cash flow for investment, you save up money in the account to build it up and then invest some more. This is the same exact thing we're doing, but instead of using a savings account at the bank that pays you 0.0%, and then you get taxed on 0.0%, right? Now we can use something that actually is not only, one, is paying you much better returns than the bank. 2, it's tax-free. Everything in there that builds and grows is tax-free, and it comes out tax-free, just like a Roth, right? But of course, you get access from that money from day one to use it however you want. And you invest it outside. So it's just like pulling money out of a savings account. You can withdraw it, or you borrow from the insurance company the money there. This is the key that makes it work. And by the way, this works much better if you have like numbers and things like that. And I do have a YouTube video that shows how they work. But you can actually borrow, like you're saying, like access your own money by it. You can borrow from the insurance company. So it's almost like them giving you a line of credit. They give you the money from one hand, your money's still in there growing. So say that, for example, you've got $100,000 in there, you decide to borrow $50,000, right? And they do it like this leverage line of credit. Now you borrow this $50,000, that money is still in your account. You're still earning compound tax-free interest on the $100,000. But now you got $50,000 from the insurance company that they gave you, because they gave you, like, they know that the money's in there. They give you this money. By the way, there's no minimum monthly payment. The balloon payment, when it's fully due, is when you die. So that's the only time it's actually, you have to have the whole loan paid off, is when you actually die. And they just take that from the death benefit. Whatever's balance is owed, They take that, give the rest to your family. So there's no minimum monthly payment. Unlike a home equity line of credit, if you borrow from that, you got to pay monthly payments every single month. Here, even though they charge you interest, it's like usually 5% interest. There's no monthly payments required. You know, you
Right.
pay back however, whenever you want, which is great. Because if you're trying to be an investor, say you're trying to do something that's a short-term investment, might take 3 to 6 months to get your money back. Great. Well, no problem. Like they'll charge you the 5% per year interest, but there's no minimum monthly payment you have to pay if you're not getting paid from that investment. Now, if you are getting paid regular stable cash flow, like with your fund, Wendy, right? It's easy because you can just take that cash flow, put it right back in to pay towards that line of credit that you have. Here's what's the kicker is that unlike a line of credit, you go with home equity line of credit, which by the way, I still leverage those for investing too. But unlike those, I don't get paid anything from my line of credit. My bank doesn't pay me money for having that line of credit. I pay interest to that, but that's it. My life insurance, though, is earning tax-free dividends at the same time. Well, yes, I pay them, but the interest I'm earning actually out-earn the interest that I pay on the loan. So what ends up happening is that's how I earn money in two places at the same time. I'm earning more money from the life insurance than I am from the money I borrowed from them to be able to use that money and leverage it.
Okay, let's talk about this is so interesting. Let's talk about the comparisons between a self-directed IRA and this insurance policy. So in a self-directed IRA, I know I'm limited as to how much money I can put in, whether it's a Roth or a 401k or a self-directed IRA or
Yep.
wherever I am in my life. Are there limits as to what I can put into the insurance?
Well, based on the way I design them, because the way I do it is pretty unique, even for infinite banking purposes, right? The way I design them is pretty hard to max fund what you're based on your death benefit, because I get the minimum death benefit with a max amount of cash going in, and that's why they're so cash rich. That's why usually within 5 years, whatever you've paid into it, you have in cash. You know,
So we
not
might do a $10,000 death benefit or a $50,000 death benefit rather than a $500,000 or $1 million death benefit. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, based in principle, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that it might end up being more than that. You know, a death benefit might still be higher than that, so you'll still have something. But yeah, I try to figure out, like, based on the amount of money we're trying to put in per year, what's the minimum death benefit we have to do to get it right up to that tax-free line, because it is based. The tax-free part of it is based on how much insurance death benefit do you have and the cost of that insurance, and
Gotcha.
that's what determines, you know, that what they call a MEC limit or modified endowment contract. Basically, at what point does it become taxable? So I've got people that are putting in like 5 or 10,000 a year into this. I have people putting in 500,000 a year into this, right? The only limit is one, it's based on death benefit, which usually doesn't hit. The second one that most people will hit is if you try to save more than 25% of your gross income. You know, they want to try to limit you to 25%. There are sometimes ways around it, but here's the thing: the 25% limit is based on really a stated income. It's not like they check with the IRS to see what your tax returns are. They have you fill out an application. How much do you make per year? So if I have somebody that says, "Hey, I want to put in 50,000 a year, but I make 180,000," I'm like, "Well, technically, you need to make 200,000 for them to approve that." They're like, "All right, I'm putting in 200,000." Like, you know, that they're not gonna like double check on you, check with the IRS or anything on that kind of thing, But I'm not saying you should go and just lie on applications like, the mortgage days or whatever. But back in the last recession, right? But I have had people they're like, well, I don't want to show too much money. Like, this is the opposite. This is like applying for a mortgage. Like, you want to show more money. Like, some people are like, oh, I don't want the IRS to know I make more than I actually do because I'm writing it off all legally. It's like, you're
Right.
already writing it off legally. They know what you're making. So
Right.
don't worry about that part. So that's the limit. So if you make, 100,000 a year, you can put in 25,000 a year, right? If you're making 500,000 a year, you can put in 125,000 a year, or 50,000 a year, you can put in 12.5, right? That's usually the basic limits. But other than that, there's no limit. The other thing too is commitment wise, that's the limit, right? The minimum is much lower. And it depends on your age and your health and everything else. The younger you are, the bigger the range is. But typically for most people I have, they're like in their 40s, 50s, and things like that. Whatever you put in as the max, the minimum is going to be about 1/4 of that, 1/4 to 1/3, right? So if you're putting in, 40,000 a year, the minimum is probably gonna be 10,000 a year. You put in
Mm.
20, it's probably gonna be about 5,000 or so a year, and so on. So there's a range, and you're not committed to that max. Although the more you do the max, the higher the rate of return becomes in those policies.
Wow, that's this is good stuff. We've got a ton of comments over in the chat box. People are, where can I get a class on this?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that want to learn more. So, talk a little bit about your podcast and things that you're doing to be able to teach this and do this for other people.
Yeah, a great podcast I have is called The Chris Miles Money Show. It took years and years to figure out the name of my show, but it took a couple of days. I actually came up with creative names, and then a bunch of my followers said, "Why don't you just call it The Chris Miles Money Show? If Dave Ramsey has a show, why don't you be The Chris Miles Money Show?" Like, all right, I could do that. So yeah, The Chris Miles Money Show. I've got over 400 episodes, so there's plenty to choose from. I just try to do them bite size, like 20 minutes or so it's easier to get through on your commute, or your commute from your bedroom to wherever you're going if you have to work from home, like a lot of us do. So, but yeah, great stuff on there. Lots of variety of topics on everything from finances. I actually just talked about that dollar cost averaging last week, in fact. So that was a good one there. The other thing too, somebody asked for the YouTube link of that video I did on the numbers and how it works with infinite banking. If you search Chris Miles Infinite Banking, if you search that, you probably will find my video. There's one with another guy, one of our friends, Lane Kawaoka, that shows up. Somehow it shows up ahead of mine on YouTube. I don't know how, but got some magic there. But if you search Chris Miles Infinite Banking, you'll probably find a video that has like a little screen share thing there that says, how to get your investment money to pay you twice. Webinar. If you look for, how to get your investment money to pay you twice, that will be the one that I did. Actually, when we were at Freedom Founders, I recorded up in a hotel room. So
I'm typing these in to pay you twice. So people will have them in the chat. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that you can save the chat. If you go over to the right side of your screen, down at the bottom part of your chat are 3 little dots. Click on that, and the first offer is to save a chat. So make sure you do that. So Chris, I mean, can anybody do this? What if I'm a brand new investor and I got no money? How can I start this?
it could be a great way to start out. I'll tell you, like the way I have some people using it, and I've done it differently too, because, for example, there's 2 ways you can use this. This money is actually liquid. You can get to it within a week to week and a half. So you start somewhere. You can always start doing something. I had one guy that said, "Hey, what if I only do 10,000 a year? Like that means the first year I'll only have about $8,000 in there, right?" I was like, "That's true. I mean, that's not a lot to buy a property or do a whole lot with, but it's somewhere to start.
You can
and
do
that's
options
fine."
with it, right?
What's that?
You can do options with it.
You could do options. You could do, sometimes there's people that will do some things out there, like different types of, short-term lending or whatever it might be. Right. But, I'll tell you, like, lately, especially with everything going on in the world and I've told people that this is a great way to store some of your cash reserves. If you have your emergency savings account, like your 6 months saved up, one of the problems of having the 6 months reserves is it's not making any money. It's earning that point nothing percent. Right. Especially if it's sitting in the bank. Well, my wife, for example, she said, "Chris, I want to have more money set aside than just 6 months. I want to make sure we have $200,000 sitting on the sidelines that we don't touch. That's just there in case something blows up in the world." Right. And I was like, that's a big opportunity cost. That's a lot of cash sitting on the side. So I said, let's make a deal. Let's take 2/3 of that 200,000. Let's designate that from our life insurance, make that our part of our emergency fund, because we know we can get that money in about a week anyways. Have 2/3 there. The other third is just like in between the bank and online savings accounts, earning, point nothing to 1% ish. Right. Let's do that. Like, let's split it up. Let's just not have everything in the bank. Let's have some money earmarked over here in the insurance. Anything above that, then we can invest with it. But let's at least keep a good 130,000 of that money in the life insurance, earning, 4 or 5%, tax free. Plus, by the way, in most states, it's also protected against lawsuits and creditors, 100%. So if you have millions of
Wow.
dollars stored up there, someone sues you, they can get to your savings account, they can even get to your IRAs, but they cannot get to your life insurance.
Yeah, I'm thinking, why even have a savings account when you have this as an option?
Yeah,
So how quickly could I get to it if I needed it?
a week. Yeah, about a week or so, week and a half. I had somebody request it just a few weeks ago. They requested on a Tuesday. It was after Memorial Day. She said, "Can I have it by the end of the week? I have a deal we got to close on Saturday." I said, "That's a little tight. Like they guarantee 7 to 10 days." And she was lucky. She got it by Saturday, you know? So
Wow.
usually about a week or so, as I just tell people. So, that's why I say from an emergency fund standpoint, hey, if something that bad's coming up, you've got time. You got money in the bank that you could access today, maybe even online savings you could transfer to that bank within a day or two. And then this can follow right on the backside of it in case you need that money too. So yeah,
Wow.
it's very liquid. In fact, even if you do a mortgage application, and I know that, and you know this because you're a mortgage broker too. When we fill out the application, they look at liquid assets. They'll say cash, savings, checking, and then of course, cash value life insurance is one of those
Right.
liquid assets that qualifies you for a mortgage. So
Right.
even banks consider that the very cash liquid savings account.
That is amazing. I'm still sitting here thinking, so if I'm earning like 4.5
Hmm.
from my policy
Hmm.
and I'm paying 5, I'm really paying 0.5%,
Yeah.
right?
And even then, if you use that cash flow from that investment to pay back towards it, you'll actually still end up winning. That's one of the things you'll see in that video is that there's compound interest and there's simple interest, and they're not the same.
Right.
It's the same thing I learned like with mortgages, right? Like if I want to not pay off my mortgage and let that money that I could use to pay off the mortgage sit there in compound, like in a CD, for example, if my mortgage is at 3.5%, the only thing I need to earn is about 1.6% over those 30 years of that mortgage, and I'll make more interest than I paid over the life of that loan.
Wow.
That's the crazy thing about compound interest. They're not the same. You don't have to earn the same interest rate to beat it. And that's what happens to the life insurance too, is that even though they're paying you dividends, even if it doesn't pay you, 5%, even though it eventually does anyways too, right? Even if it doesn't, the interest will still beat the money they're charging you because you're taking that cash flow from the investment, putting it back in, paying that line of credit down, which you can pull back out later anyways. You're just doing that same thing. You're just rotating the money, funneling it through. You end up paying less in interest, and that's how you double dip because you'll make
Wow.
interest. You'll still net making a gain from the interest that you borrowed, right? From the money you borrowed, and you're making money from the investment too at the same time. So yeah, if your fund's paying them 6%, for example, right? And they go and they use the life insurance as well. They're still making an extra few percent on top of that 6% using the life insurance instead of just using their cash savings that now you're having to use to build slowly back up in your savings account. So it works
Okay.
faster.
So, Chris, I have so many questions here. It isn't even funny. And I know it's past our time, but I'm going to ask
Yeah.
them anyway. So, what about the taxes on the earnings?
So you'll still be taxed on your investments the same way. So it's not like you keep it inside of an IRA or anything like that. You're just investing just think of it like a savings account, but it's tax free, right? And it's going to grow tax free with the money that's growing inside the policy. But when you borrow money from the policy to go and invest, any investments you do, they get taxed however. So if it's real estate based, obviously you'll write off a lot of things, of course. If it's just simple interest, you'll pay interest on it as well. So you get taxed on your investments the same way as you would normally just investing from a savings account.
Okay. Now I've got another one that says, and I might need for you to unmute yourself, Jerome Myers. It says, will you speak to what would make you have to pay back the loan on the policy prior to death? I'm not sure I understand that question. Jerome, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So there are some instances with these policies where you'll have to pay back some of the loan because you guys are talking about using it as a savings account. And so if you take the loan against the policy,
Mm-hmm.
I think if you take too much out of the cash value, you end up having to either service the debt or pay back the loan. So I just wanted to speak to that.
Yeah. So at least with the policies I set up, that there's like an overloan protection. They won't let you borrow more than they do. They'll usually let you access 95% of the total cash. So it's pretty tough to run in that situation because, again, the only thing you could have happen is if you never pay the loan, you never even pay the interest on it or anything towards it, it can compound against you, but you're also compounding the account at the same time. So there are policies. If you do the traditional policies, that's the thing, is that these policies are not all equal. Even people that claim to be infinite bankers still don't do it as well as they should, because they just don't know, or they just don't want to cut their commissions that far, right? So they kind of go halfway. So if you're doing more of a traditional policy, that could happen. If you're doing more like with my policies, it's almost virtually impossible to blow up. So yeah, you don't really run in that situation at all with my type of policies, but it would only be more the interest that's compounding. They might say, hey, we need you to pay this much of interest if you borrow from a traditional type policy and do that.
Awesome. Awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions? You can unmute yourself if you have one. Okay, so everybody understands this completely. I'm kidding. So I want you to say again, if people can get on the Chris Miles Money Show to learn more. You do all kinds of. Are you doing videos, blogs? How does that work on your Money Show?
Well, I'm now doing both because I use the same guy you guys use now.
Oh yeah,
so.
Scott Patton, awesome.
So I do have a blog on my website, moneyripples.com, and he starts to upload some of those videos there, as well as on YouTube. It's audio. I mean, it's published there first, so you can find that on iTunes or your favorite podcast app or wherever you want to find it. So yeah, you can find it there. And it looks like Cheryl, she went and did the research, found the YouTube video link as well.
Yes, thank you, Cheryl, for putting that up there. And then I have a question from Randy. He's asking if there's an age threshold where this doesn't make sense. That's a great question.
Good question. Yeah. It depends. Usually into your early to mid 60s are pretty good. After that, maybe not as much. I mean, there's things you can do still if you need like that death benefit, and there's ways to make it, more economical, right? But, yeah, I'd say up to like mid to low 60s are usually pretty good. If you're like, well, I'm beyond that, right? Well, here's the cool thing you could do. And, Wendy, you and I even have a mutual friend from Freedom Founders where he was in horrible health. He was 400 pounds, big guy, big teddy bear kind of guy, right? But he couldn't qualify himself. And so we just put on his wife, and she was in great health. And by the way, women actually have a huge advantage because they usually have about a 3-year advantage over men because they live longer. So women's policies actually get a better ROI than men's do.
It's because we're smarter.
What's that? What's that? Sorry, I missed it.
It's because we're smarter. That's why we live
right.
longer.
Exactly. Hey, if there's anything in the world that women can win at least it could be here, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So women, you can put on your kids. A lot of people use it as like their replacement of 529 plans because I get people complaining all the time that they hate their 529 college savings plans that can only be used for certain things, and it's gambling in the market. So they want a different option. So there's all kinds of ways you can use it. But yeah,
it sounds like a great idea for your kids because the price for their insurance would be so low, right?
Yeah, you can't dump a lot in because of that. Usually, depending on the age of the kids, if they're in their double digits, you can usually put in at least 5, 6, 7,000 a year as a max. If they're newborn, like I have somebody who just after they hit the 14-day mark. Once they're 14 days old, you can get a policy on a newborn. But that for them, it's like 3,000 a year you can do as a max, just because their insurance is so cheap. They can't. You put it anymore, they're going to say, wait, why does this kid need $1 million of a death benefit? Why do they need so much? It's Richie Rich. What's going on here?
Yeah. So. I love that cartoon.
So to answer John's question, I don't have a website about the insurance products per se. Like you can't get quotes or anything, but you can reach out to me through my website, moneyripples.com, and figure out how it would look if it makes sense in your situation.
Awesome. Chris, I just want to thank you so much. You got up so early to come and share this with us. And it was just, not only was it good information, but I really love the heart talk you gave to us as well, following principles. And I mean, that's just right up our alley. We like to hang out with Jesus for a while before we get into business, and you really helped us do that. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much for that. I hope you have an awesome Father's Day, and I wish happy Father's Day to all of you who are not only fathers but mentors, and gentlemen who are just important in so many people's lives. Understand how important you are. You guys are to all of us. Thank you so very much. I hope everyone has an incredible weekend, and we'll see you next Friday. Again, that's Chris at moneyripples.com, right? Got it.
Yep. Yes,
Got
that's
it.
my email. Yep.
Thank you so much. Love you all. We'll talk soon.